So hello friends, um, today I'm going to discuss the recall questions for ophthalmology from this recent INI CET. As far as the recall questions are there, you know that some options might not be, the actual options which have been there in the paper, because there might be some changes, some errors in it. So if you have any comments, any want any modification in the options or in the question, then please let me know in the comments. So I'll start with the first question. This is all are components of safe strategy except A, B, C, D: surgery, antibiotics, facial hygiene, and engaging community participation. The answer here will be D. Okay, the answer will be D. Engaging community participation. Okay. So what is safe strategy? Safe strategy is used for trachoma prevention. S stands for surgery, A for antibiotic, F for facial hygiene, and E for environmental change. Okay, improving access to clean water, latrines, waste and fly control, and reduce crowding. So, mind it, reduce crowding is a part of the strategy, and not the other way around, like engaging community participation. That is not a part of the strategy. This environmental change means reduce crowding so that there is less chance of transmission from one person to another. How does trachoma transmit? Trachoma transmits by skin to skin contact, or through saliva, or it may be through fomites. So all this transmission can be reduced by environmental change, which is the primordial prevention. Next is the facial hygiene, face washing, which will also help in preventing, the infection happening in the eye, the chlamydia infection, trachoma infection. The face washing will help in that. This is the primary prevention. Next is antibiotics. This is secondary prevention. Antibiotics is tetracycline or azithromycin. How much is used? Tetracycline is used 1% tetracycline ointment, or you can use azithromycin 1 gram stacked orally. Okay, so this can treat any active chlamydia infection, any trachoma infection happening in the eye. You can treat that. Now, surgery, S for surgery, what is it? It is basically entropion surgery. What happens in trachoma, I'll tell you. There is infection, active infection in the eye that leads to conjunctival scarring, which causes the eyelid margin to turn inward. The lid margin turns inward, which is called entropion. So if that happens, what will happen? If the lid margin is turned inwards, the eyelashes will rub on the cornea. Okay, so the eyelashes will rub on the cornea, which can cause ultimately a corneal keratopathy, and that can lead to a corneal opacity. So this entropion surgery will prevent all this corneal keratopathy to some extent. It will prevent the corneal opacity, and hence this is the tertiary prevention. Okay, so now I'll move to the next question. The second question is, you can show in this picture, there was a picture shown where all the 9 gazes were shown. All the cardinal gazes of the patient are shown here. Which nerve is most probably affected? Okay, the answer would be third nerve. Okay, so this is a third nerve or oculomotor palsy. Why? What happens in oculomotor palsy? As you can see in this picture, look at this. There is ptosis And if you lift this eyelid, you will find that there is down and out gaze. Also, because of this down and out gaze, that is there is a strabismus, squint has been developed due to the third nerve palsy. So what will happen that the eye will also the normal alignment between the two eyes will be lost. So it will cause diplopia. So these are the clinical features: ptosis, down and out gaze, and diplopia. Down and out gaze. Why does this happen? This I'll tell you. All extraocular muscles you must be knowing are supplied by third nerve except SO4 and LR6. SO4 is superior oblique is supplied by the fourth nerve and the LR, that is lateral rectus, is supplied by the sixth nerve. So this down and out gaze is because of unopposed action of superior oblique and lateral rectus. The out gaze is because the lateral rectus is pulling the eye, from the lateral side, but the medial rectus is not active because medial rectus is supplied by the third nerve. So the lateral rectus will pull it outwards. So there will be an outward gaze. And for the down gaze, it is because the superior oblique is a depressor. So the elevators normally, the superior rectus, which is supplied by the third nerve, is not acting. So the unopposed action of the depressor superior oblique will cause a down gaze, will cause the eye to look in a down gaze. So there will be an opposed action of superior oblique and lateral rectus causing down and out gaze. Okay. Now look at this picture. Here we can see that the abduction is of the left eye is happening normally. Okay. But you look at this picture, the adduction here is not happening. Okay, the adduction of the left eye is not happening normally because the medial rectus is not working due to the third nerve palsy. Okay, what are the causes of third nerve palsy? Microvascular trauma, neoplasm, post neurosurgery, compression from aneurysm. Now what about the pupil? Usually in third nerve palsy there is pupil dilation, that is the pupil is affected when there is a compressive neuropathy. That suppose this in this case you can see an aneurysm is compressing the third nerve from outside. So the the pupillary fibers, that is the parasympathetic fibers, which are present in the periphery of the third nerve, those are getting compressed by this aneurysm. Okay, so in case of compressive lesion, the outer parasympathetic fibers which supply to the sphincter pupillae, they are getting affected, and hence you are finding pupil dilation in compressive lesions. What about the microvascular lesions? In microvascular lesions, that is ischemic uh, neuropathies, you will find the pupil is spared. There is pupil sparing. Why? Because the vascular disease will lead to the infarct of the central nerve fibers of the third nerve. The peripheral parasympathetic fibers which supply to the sphincter pupillae, they will remain unaffected. Okay. I'll now move to the third question. The most common or characteristic way of spread of retinoblastoma is lymphatic, optic nerve, direct spread, or hematogenous. The answer would be along the optic nerve. Okay, so suppose this is the eyeball, this is internally this retina, and this is the tumor, the retinoblastoma. This can spread along the optic nerve to the brain directly. This is the most common route of invasive spread. Okay, the other routes can be through the choroid and sclera and spread into the orbit. Otherwise, it can go also via the directly into the bloodstream and then go into the liver, bone marrow, and bone. So here we can see that in a child with an intraocular tumor, this is retinoblastoma, what we find is a white reflex or leukocoria. Okay, if we see the fundus picture, this is the tumor. Okay, this is the tumor, whitish yellowish intraocular tumor coming from the retina. So if we discuss tumors, this is a primary tumor. Suppose we discuss a primary tumor, what will it be? The most common primary orbital tumor in adults is cavernous hemangioma. Okay. In children, the most common orbital tumor primary is rhabdomyosarcoma. Okay, and intraocular, most common in children is retinoblastoma, and in case of adults, it is malignant melanoma. Okay, so most common primary orbital tumor, cavernous hemangioma, adults. Children, it is rhabdomyosarcoma. Intraocular is retinoblastoma for children and malignant melanoma for adults. Okay, so now I'll move to the next question. Question number 4. This is a patient presented with a visual field defect as shown below. He may be suffering from a lesion of which part of the visual pathway? Occipital lobe, right, left occipital lobe, right optic tract, central chiasma. Okay, so I'm exactly not sure of what the picture was which was there in the paper. It can be this one, the visual rate, or it can be this one. These two are different. This one is a left homonymous hemianopia and this is a right homonymous hemianopia. So if it is a right homonymous hemianopia, then it will be, the answer will be left occipital lobe. Okay, but if it is a left homonymous hemianopia, then the answer will be right occipital lobe. Okay, because it causes contralateral homonymous hemianopia. So now let's have a look at the different lesions of the visual pathway. So first, this is number 1. The optic nerve is affected. What happens is there is a total right eye vision loss. Okay. Now this number 2, if there is a central chiasmal lesion, then there is a bitemporal hemianopia. Why? Because these nasal fibers from each eye, these are coming and these are crossing at the level of central chiasma. These nasal fibers are responsible for the temporal field of vision. So when there is a central chiasmal lesion, these nasal fibers supplying the temporal field, they are affected, and hence we find bitemporal hemianopia. Now this number 3, this is a lateral part of the chiasma. If the lateral part of the chiasma is affected, then what will happen? There will be a left nasal hemianopia. Why? Because this left eye will find these temporal fibers, which are responsible for the nasal field of vision. They are getting affected. They are getting affected by the lateral lesion. So there will be a nasal hemianopia of the same side, of the left side lateral area affected, the same side left-sided nasal hemianopia will be there. Now coming to the number 4, this is the optic tract. The optic tract, which supplies the fibers and ends at the lateral geniculate nucleus, thalamus. This optic tract, if it is affected, then there will be a right homonymous hemianopia. Okay, why? Because it will affect these right eye nasal fibers and the left eye temporal fibers. So the left eye nasal field of vision and the right eye temporal field of vision will be affected. Okay. Now coming to this one, which is important because we have faced this kind of question. This is affecting the occipital lobe, number 5. Okay, this is affecting due to the occipital lobe where there is the visual cortex. When occipital lobe visual cortex is affected, then there we will find this kind of picture. There will be contralateral homonymous hemianopia with macular sparing. Why macular sparing? Because macula has double blood supply. Has double blood supply by posterior cerebral artery and middle cerebral artery. So if there is any lesion affecting the posterior cerebral artery, and which posterior cerebral artery is affected, what will happen? Cerebral artery is still supplying the blood to the macular area. So the macular area will be spared, okay, in the visual cortex, right? So there will be a macular sparing. Okay, so now I'll move to the next question. Question number 5, most common lacrimal gland tumors. The options are pleomorphic adenoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, mucoepidermoid carcinoma, adenoid cystic carcinoma. The answer will be not the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. If the answer will be non-Hodgkin's lymphoma if it is mentioned elderly patients, like more than 70 years. But the answer will be A, pleomorphic adenoma. If nothing as such is mentioned, if like the patient is adult around 40 years age. So overall, if you ask me what is the most common lacrimal gland tumor, the answer is pleomorphic adenoma. But if you ask what is common lacrimal gland tumor in elderly patients 70 years of age, then the answer will be non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Okay, why? Because of this, most of the lacrimal gland tumors, that is 55%, are benign, and the most common benign tumor of the lacrimal gland is pleomorphic adenoma. Okay, so pleomorphic adenoma is the most common lacrimal gland tumor overall. Most benign lacrimal gland tumors, that is also pleomorphic adenoma. Now, if you are most malignant lacrimal gland tumors, 45% are malignant, of which the most common is adenoid cystic carcinoma. Okay, adenoid cystic carcinoma. This is the most common malignant tumor. So lacrimal gland tumors can be divided into epithelial and non-epithelial. Epithelial में most common is benign pleomorphic adenoma. Epithelial most common malignant is adenoid cystic carcinoma. Non-epithelial most common is lymphoma, non-Hodgkin. Okay. So now move on to the next question. Question 6. Drug which is contraindicated in angle closure glaucoma with uveitis. So what actually this question, the language was, I am not really sure of that. Maybe some people are saying that it was mentioned that drug contraindicated in a patient having uveitis with high IOP. What is the drug is contraindicated? Some are saying the question was like angle closure glaucoma with some cells in anterior chamber. What will be the drug contraindicated? Okay. So in any case, the answer will be prostaglandin analog. Why? Because prostaglandin analogs increase inflammation. Okay. So it will be contraindicated in any kind of inflammation in the eye, any uveitis, contraindicated in uveitis. Okay. Now let's have a look at about angle closure glaucoma. How does it present and what is the management? Usually, angle closure glaucoma presents with a red eye, corneal haze, and mid-dilated pupils. This acute attack of angle closure glaucoma presents with these features, right? This is a hazy cornea with mid-dilated pupils, and there is also ciliary congestion. So why does this happen? This happens basically because of a pupillary block mechanism where this is the cornea, this is the iris, this is the lens behind this. Now, if there is a iris and lens contact, if this happens, then what will be the outcome? The outcome will be the aqueous from the posterior chamber is not allowed to come to the anterior chamber. Okay, this is not happening. If this aqueous doesn't come out from the posterior chamber into the anterior chamber through the pupil, then what will happen? It will gradually accumulate behind the iris, and the iris will bow anteriorly. So this angle of the anterior chamber will be compromised. It will become very shallow, and then this drainage of aqueous, as you know, happens through the angle of the anterior chamber through the trabecular meshwork. This will be compromised due to clear bowing and further shutting of the anterior chamber. So this is the mechanism of acute attack of angle closure glaucoma. What is the management? Management, basically you have to give IV mannitol, acetazolamide, pilocarpine eye drops, and also you have to do a laser, YAG laser, PI, that is a peripheral iridotomy. There is an iridotomy which is made here so that the fluid can pass through this iridotomy from the posterior chamber to the anterior chamber. Okay. So now coming to the next question, question 7. A patient presented with a swollen left eye and history of vegetative matter trauma a few days back. The patient also has hypopyon and corneal ulcer. The most probable positive organism is amoeba. Option A, viral keratitis, phycomycosis, bacterial keratitis. The answer will be phycomycosis. That is fungal corneal infection. Why? Because of this history of vegetative matter trauma. Fungal corneal infection is usually associated with vegetative matter or animal tail striking on the eye or any vegetative matter falling in the eye. The most common cause of fungal corneal ulcer is Aspergillus fumigatus. Okay. Now, how does the fungal ulcer look? This you can see this is a small fungal ulcer. Small ulcer here. Here, slightly bigger. But how's the look? The look is basically dry. It's a dry-looking ulcer. There are feathery margins. And the signs are much more than the symptoms. Okay, the signs will be much more. On examination, you'll find a lot of findings, these feathery margins, dry looking infiltrates and all. But sometimes you will find satellite lesions also. But the symptoms of the patient will not be much. But obviously, when they progress, they can become more severe, like this, if untreated. So timely treatment is important with antifungal agents, natamycin eye drop, voriconazole, and amphotericin B. Okay, so now moving to the next question, question number 8. Proptosis in child with Desmin positive tumor. Desmin positive tumor. Basically, this means that there is a muscle component in the tumor, and hence the obvious answer will be embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. Rhabdomyosarcoma is a muscle tumor The none other of these are the muscle tumors. So the answer obviously will be this. Now moving on to the next question, question number 9. Identify the block nasociliary, anterior ethmoidal, sphenopalatine, greater palatine. Okay. So about this question also, I'm not sure exactly what the options were, but most likely these were the options. If you feel there is some modification which needs to be done, please let me know in the comment section. So this is the picture of the anterior ethmoidal block. So if this kind of picture was shown where the needle is here, okay, you can see the needle here, then it was answer would be anterior ethmoidal. If the picture was like this, then this is the nasociliary nerve block. Okay, here. Now, what is this? This is a palatine, greater palatine block. And this one going through the nose into the sphenopalatine ganglion. This is the sphenopalatine block. Okay. So whatever it depends on the picture, the image which was given. Accordingly, we can answer. Now this last question, question number 10. This one, I'm absolutely not sure what was the option. It's being said that there was an image which was given, which was showing the medial rectus muscle, and the question was asked that medial rectus muscle nucleus. It was asked about the medial rectus muscle nucleus, where it is located. Nucleus is located at the level of red nucleus, inferior colliculus, superior colliculus, fastigial nucleus. People are giving other options also. So actually, this question is a little doubtful. Please gather, if you can gather some information on this question, please do so that we can get the real options, actual options, and accordingly we can answer the question. Okay, so that's all. Please remember that all these questions have been recall questions, so any modifications which need to be done, let me know, and accordingly I'll can redo the questions and come up with all the right options which were actually there in the paper, and accordingly we can do that. Okay, so please let me know, and thank you.